Not prepared.
J. Robert Oppenheimer was the head of the Manhattan Project and created the bombs that were dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima at the Los Alamos labs.
Why?
Why they would be doing this now, who was cast, who directed, who wrote, and what's the thing behind the thing.
The timing seems a little suspect. 2 years ago, right before the movie went into production, of the Biden regime exonerating Oppenheimer for a trial that happened a long time ago, 50 years after he died. Subsequently, a $100 million movie is made about him being basically some kind of enigmatic hero.
Welcome to the special edition of the Flyover Conservative podcast. We like to always get into the thing behind the thing. The thing I use as an example oftentimes, people think McDonald's is a cheeseburger company. No, they're a real estate company. They make more money on real estate, the land that the buildings sit on, that they're permanently owner of, even to the franchisees that they lease. So you look at it, think, oh, it's a hamburger company. No, it's a real estate company. They own more valuable real estate on corners and intersections than the Catholic Church. That's what they're really about. So when you kind of know what is really behind the thing, you kind of understand the thing.
True.
And that's what today's episode is about. We're going to be talking about Oppenheimer, new movie coming out, and you need to know what is the thing behind the thing. And there's nobody that can break that down than the person who brings us the one thing, Melke.
Yay!
This is such a joy, and I love being with you guys, so thank you so much for having me. Very exciting. I spent 20 plus years in Hollywood, from very young kid to now, so I've watched a lot happen, and when you guys suggested we talk about this, I was very excited because I don't get to do it that much, so thanks for having me.
Yes, this is going to be a great show. I
kind of pictured almost like a little behind the scenes, like when you people don't buy DVDs anymore, but it's like the extra features that go and the real characters behind, because sometimes they're whitewashed or expunged or changed or made to look different ways, and it's amazing how well a film, when you watch it. We've talked before. We've done a thing about the drug trafficking, and that movie they made with Tom Cruise where he's flying drugs in and out. I was sitting there with Stacy in the theater, and because of storytelling, I said, I don't want him to get caught. Do you?
No.
I'm pulling for Tom Cruise to not get caught
doing something bad.
And I'm like, how? And I even am kind of aware of the storyline, but I still was pulling for Tom Cruise to not get caught, even though he's horrible in every way in this movie, smuggling drugs in and the whole bit. I'm like, but that's how powerful movies are. They can pull you in to a narrative. So I'm so excited for you for people that are going to be going to that movie this week. Please share, and share this episode, because you're going to have friends that are going to this movie. And I'm not encouraging people to not go or to go. You want to, but you want to go in aware that you're not susceptible to programming from an outside source without knowledge on your own. And so just log this as an educational episode. If you want more education, you can always go to themelkshow.com. Two things you want to do there. One, you want to register for the newsletter, because it's the way to guarantee you have a steady pipeline to truth, no matter what they try to do in the world of censorship. Number two thing you want to do when you go there is go to the resources tab. It's the very top. If you're listening to this on the treadmill or somewhere else, you can always go to themelkshow.com. But when you go there, you want to go to the resources section and get blown away, because she keeps the receipts, the facts. She's one of the best researchers really in our movement of doing the work behind the scenes to uncover truth. She reads the papers from other countries, looking at things from many directions. She goes through historical archives. She reads the biography. She does the real work and the heavy lifting, which is great. So you don't have to. You can go there and go to the resources tab, and all of those receipts are archived and stored for you. So you want to go to themelkshow.com. Store it, save it as one of your favorites on your web browser, because it's something a new thing comes up 6 months from now, you're like, hey, what's the real deal on this? More than likely, she's done the work already. She could go there. Every image that's used in this episode, we'll send to you for free as a Dropbox download link. Just send us a text at 40509, the word MEL, M-E-L, 40509, and you'll get an automatic link to your phone that you can go through everything that we get to today, even sometimes things we don't get to. All will come to you in a Dropbox link. Again, just text 40509, the word Mel, and then you are in ownership. It puts you in the driver's seat, not in the back seat, dumb, sick, and broken, blind, like the media apparatuses want you to be.
True.
It puts you in the front where you are actually in charge of your own mind because you're putting truth in there, and it helps you filter the things that are coming out to you every single day.
Cool. Well, that is so nice of you guys. And I mean, I just want to say to you guys and to your audience and to producer Colton and to Avery and everyone, the Flyover Conservatives show has gotten so amazing. It is endlessly evolving and going to new levels. I'm so honored to be here and to watch you guys grow so much since we've been doing shows for about 2 years. So really, your show is top notch. I watch all of your episodes, and I hope everyone else out there does too, because there's people doing really quality work out there, and you guys certainly are on the top of that list.
Thank you,
Well,
Mel.
thank you.
Really appreciate it.
This specifically is a really good match because we're incredibly curious and
I'm ready to take notes.
ready to learn. And you, like I said, really do the heavy lifting and the hard work.
That's for sure. Now, if you guys are listening and thinking, what are you guys talking about? Let's play the trailer for them real fast because I think it would be important to understand this is in theaters. It's coming out this week. And so if you haven't seen it, you're unaware, check out this trailer real fast.
This is a national emergency.
Detonator charged.
We're in a race against the Nazis. And I know what it means if the Nazis have a bomb.
We have a 12-month head start.
18.
How could you possibly know that?
We've got one hope. All America's industrial might and scientific innovation connected here. A secret laboratory. Keep everyone there until it's done.
Let's go recruit some scientists.
Build a town, build it fast. If we don't let scientists bring their families, we'll never get the best.
Why would we go to the middle of nowhere for who knows how long?
Why?
Why? How about because this is the most important thing to ever happen in the history of the world?
You're the great improviser, but this you can't do in your head.
Are we saying there's a chance that when we push that button, we destroy the world?
Chances are near zero.
Near zero.
What do you want from theory alone?
Zero would be nice.
This is a matter of life and death. But I can perform this miracle.
World War II would be over. Our boys would come home.
That's happening, isn't it?
The world will remember this day. Our work here will ensure a peace mankind has never seen.
Until somebody builds a bigger one.
You are the man who gave them the power to destroy themselves. And the world is not prepared.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3,
Truman needs to know what's next.
2,
What's next?
1.
Woo!
Big budget. They
Yep.
spared no expense. And here's what we're going to break down in this episode, guys, is the real characters one by one. Who's Matt Damon in real life? Who did he play? Why? What was the real story behind each of these people? But even more importantly, the timing of this movie and why they would be doing this now. Who was cast? who directed, who wrote, and what's the thing behind the thing. The thing is what they're selling you. The thing behind the thing is what you need to know, because that's the agenda.
Yeah, for people that don't know this about me, I had studied film at NYU, and after that, and I specialized in over the years, the last 20 years, in historical dramatic screenwriting. So I have written 7 screenplays, some short form, some full feature length, putting together the pieces of times in history and then putting them into narrative form like they are doing in this movie. From everything I've seen, I've talked to a couple people from my other life that have already either seen this or know people who have. Christopher Nolan is a phenomenal, incredible, one of the best filmmakers maybe we've ever had, but certainly in our generation. He's also an old school filmmaker. He writes, directs, and produces himself. He has full control of everything. He also shot this on IMAX cameras, which is very unheard of. And there's a lot of young filmmakers of this day and age, especially of the YouTube, generation as well, that only shoot digital, and only shoot, basic camera and or even on their phones. This movie is old school, as good as it gets filmmaking. I believe he doesn't even work with monitors that he watches. I think he's just a straight up artist and one of the greatest out there. Interestingly about him, he doesn't like the movies. He wants to see, like many people, even when I was back in school, we always talked about it. Many real filmmakers prefer that their films, God willing, because it's like a 98% failure rate there, are seen on the big screen. So he shoots his movies, and he's not a big fan of streaming. So he had always made his movies, I believe, with Warner Brothers. But this is the first one without Warner Brothers, because they started doing a thing which also Irishman and other films did this with Netflix, where they were putting out the movie in the theater and simultaneously putting it on streaming. And Nolan wants this movie seen on the big screen, and if possible on IMAX. So that's that's very intense here, but people should understand this movie is, as far as Hollywood goes, especially post-COVID, especially a lot of money leaving Hollywood and not a lot of profits. The Writers Guild and the Actors Guild are now on strike. This is probably one of the last great movies you'll see for a while in terms of $100 million budget and $20 million piece actors.
Wow.
They spared no expense in the caliber of people that they've brought in, and it's just interesting. We're going to get into narratives and why and the combinations of things, but so often there is this signaling, this messaging, this almost like it's like prophetic, like little preview of what is in store. In real life, at least a preview of the news cycle of what's about to come from movies, and this cast of characters is not new to that either. So I'm anxious for you to break these things down.
Yeah, no, these people, especially Matt Damon and Emily Blunt and also Robert Downey Jr., tend to be in a lot of these movies that are very topical, that seem to have, really historical significance, either retelling the past or predicting the future because they have inside knowledge of technology. They're working with the Department of Defense or in this case, the government or whatever. What's interesting, so people should know, Oppenheimer, J. Robert Oppenheimer was the head of the Manhattan Project and created the bombs that were dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima at the Los Alamos labs back in the 40s during the Red Scare, during the Cold War. He was also, this man was like a brilliant physicist. I believe he was at Harvard and then Cambridge, and then he was a professor at Berkeley, and then ran a whole lab at Princeton, also Caltech. He was also a quantum mechanics, quantum physics. He was friends with Einstein, So, this guy's brilliant beyond comprehension. So also he had a lot of turmoil in his life, but basically grew up in New York City, immigrants that ran from Germany, and got to this place. What happened was that they were being told by intelligence during Hitler's reign that Hitler was creating and the Nazis were creating nuclear bombs. And Oppenheimer and many other people that are in this movie as well are portrayed in this movie, figured that the Americans would need to create it first. So we've heard this a lot with the biological weapons that now that have all been disclosed, and a lot of this has been disclosed, or at least people are trying to disclose it, that when you talk about gain of function or Fauci or manipulating viruses, a lot of times when you push them in hearings that seem to go nowhere, but if you do, it's a lot of times the answer is, well, they were going to do it, so we wanted to do it first so that we could fight it if it happened to us. So basically, what's interesting about this timing is we never heard until this Ukraine war and the NATO, US, UK alliance versus, Russia and the people that are supporting them, so much talk of nuclear brinksmanship, like it's something that we should even consider. And after these bombs were dropped, Oppenheimer himself was really against the proliferation of bombs, because before we even finished ours, Russia finished theirs. So it was the beginning of the arms race that turned into the Cold War, that kept the whole world, like with all these things. When our parents were young, they were doing the drills, and then all of our lives. And when we were in high school or maybe elementary school, they had the day after, which was like another whole thing. And literally in the last 2 years, very irresponsibly, Zelensky himself and others, a lot of people in the Biden administration have talked openly about nuclear weapons, nuclear war. There is a proxy war against Russia that makes less and less sense. We know one thing: Russia has the most nuclear warheads. So, and I was looking up today what would happen if there was a nuclear war. I saw 50 million people would die within the first few hours. So, we have to remember that. And the other thing that's interesting about this whole story, Oppenheimer, when they finally finished the bomb, which was supposed to be, I believe, for Nazi Germany, Germany had already surrendered. And they were saying that Japan was pretty close to surrendering, but they dropped those bombs anyway. And we know what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then all the repercussions after that, because it's not just the nuclear blast, it's decades of radioactive, all kinds of complications and then illnesses, and for the people that do survive. So, this is a very complicated story. It was a very complicated man. And, but the timing is suspect to me only because we now are at a place where we have people, I believe, psychopaths of a billionaire oligarch cartel that is losing power financially, the Great Reset, the Agenda 2030, and I believe are pushing more and more towards a World War III, which would go nuclear. And I don't know if it's that this movie is coming out right on time to scare people to death, because what I'm told from people that have knowledge of this movie and what it's about and what it looks like is that it's actually very terrifying, that they do portray the consequences and what happened. And so, I think that it's also a time for discussion about, like, why are we in this war? Because also Oppenheimer, he was persecuted, we'll talk about after, and during the McCarthy era, and his security clearance was taken, which was oddly given back under the Biden administration, weirdly enough, right before this movie started shooting.
Because he really needed it right now. That's the important thing.
Yeah, because he was, now from what I was studying, it seems like he had a relationship with two women that were kind of tied to the communist or Marxist agenda. Is that true?
Yes. His brother, his sister-in-law, his wife, his girlfriend, who's they're all in the movie. Also, a lot of his friends were communists. He was also very involved in the 40s with the Communists of America, the Communist Party of America, which is still here today, and there are a lot of people in our government that are part of it. But also, he had tendencies. He said even in his trial, because he did have what appears to be some kind of show trial, but we'll talk about that in a minute, because there's also something there with the what we dealt with in COVID, where it was like, don't question the science. The science is God. This whole, manipulation of science and technology in terms of, you're not allowed to, because a lot of times people would ask him if he felt he had blood on his hands or that he sinned, and he would say that the scientists weren't the people to blame. That those are decisions of the government, but there all goes to that thing too. But yeah, he was involved with a lot of communists. He didn't deny it. He said that he later left them. The reason that his security clearance was revoked, I believe in 1954, was because he was accused by, there was a big, in 1950, we were in the middle of the Cold War, and now it's coming clear, because people weren't as much paying attention to Stalin, it appears, as they were Hitler, until Stalin became even worse in a lot of people's opinions. But there were a lot of spies on both sides, American and Russian, trading back secrets, especially atomic secrets like this and nuclear secrets. He was never charged with that, okay? But he created it and everything. But there were a lot of implications and suggestions, and Russian people that were coming forward and saying that he had a code name in Russia and that he did, in fact, transfer secrets. Whatever the case may be, he had a dinner that he went to with his friend Chevalier, also a scientist in this wet world, who was also at Berkeley, that was trading secrets to Russia and back and forth between America and Russia and the atomic program. And through that meeting, he was questioned. We know another person who was once questioned, thinking he had nothing to worry about. And then they were really trying to pick around to figure out how to go after him in what happened with General Flynn and other people that were, anyone that got called in under the Trump witch hunt, that they were just looking for anything they could find. A lot of people think that's what happened to him. But basically, he did lie. That is proven, maybe to protect his friend, or they say sometimes to protect his brother, whatever the case may be. There seemed to be a lot of evidence. It was in the middle of the Red Scare. It was a very different time. No media. There's only 3 channels, not media like now, no internet. The American people are being told different things about World War II, many of which have come out over the decades, to some not be true, some be more true than others. But basically, they took his security clearance, which stopped him from being able to participate. And at that time, he was also very against the proliferation of nuclear weapons after what happened and what he saw in hydrogen bombs. He thought that he was speaking out a lot about thinking that nuclear weapons should be regulated by international agency, if that doesn't sound like, the international agency that looked into weapons of mass destruction, or, the UN. So, I'm not a fan of the UN, but at all. I think they're the worst. But I have to say, this guy turned out to be somebody that was a problem, I believe, for the military-industrial complex. Though he started out as one thing, I think he became a voice for, as he got older. He died pretty young, in his 60s. But before that trial, and when they took his clearance, he was still at Princeton and doing other things. But I think he was, as we still are dealing with the same people, basically, and the same money, and it traded down over years, and the same financing of all these wars. I think because they wanted to be in, I think that the nuclear arms race and the arms race for the hydrogen bomb and everything was also very lucrative. I'm at a place where I just, last night we had dinner. We sat next to 2 people that fled Ukraine, and we're talking to them. They're normal. Wow. You wouldn't know. They would think that they were like, if you guys and me and Rob and them sat at a table, you would have no idea. They just looked like they just came out of, walked down the street in New York, but they actually just came from Ukraine. And we were talking to them, and everyone at the table was in agreement, why not just go for peace? And everyone there, basically, by the end of the conversation, said that this war is very lucrative for a very small group of people that want it. And I think that Oppenheimer started kind of being a thorn in the side. It's from what I'm looking at, and I'm trying to get through the book. And I do want to say the book is called, that it's based on, is called American Prometheus. And the writer seems to be, not only does she defend him in every way, and it seems to me from what I'm reading, and then there's another book that I was looking at, that she's very, not just pro Oppenheimer, but she does not believe that he had anything to do with the Soviets, in the sense that he was accused and then his security clearance removed because of. She also very much turns it on something that we're dealing now. So the writer of the book that was very involved in the making of the movie, she says this quote about it. She says she had just seen the movie, and she says, "I am at this moment stunned and emotionally recovering from having seen it all. I think it's going to be a stunning artistic achievement. I have all the hopes it will actually stimulate a national, even global conversation about the issues Oppenheimer was desperate to speak out on." Then she says, about how to live in the atomic age, how to live with the bomb, and about McCarthyism. What it is to be a patriot, what is the role of the scientist in a society drenched with technology and science, and to speak about public issues. What's interesting saying that is that this woman is, from everything I can see, is a diehard leftist Democrat. So, as are many of the people involved in this movie, actors and others. I don't know about Nolan, but I do know a lot of those actors are very outspoken supporters of Joe Biden. A lot of those people are with the agency that is the biggest supporter of Joe Biden. Most people know that for some reason Jeffrey Katzenberg is running Joe Biden's 2024 campaign. So there's not a lot of wiggle room between the Democrat Party, which is really, I believe, a globalist elite oligarchy-run party posing as Democrats, and then and Hollywood. And a lot of these people in this movie are very, very invested in the politics of this nation on the Democrat side. So it's interesting that the writer that's exonerating him is writing basically that this is a vindication for him of the McCarthyism witch hunt, which a lot of us now are looking back at McCarthyism and thinking, well, when did communism and Marxism infiltrate America? And I would beg for people to please look at when that really started and how wrong McCarthy was, but she obviously doesn't think that. But then she goes on to say, question what a real patriot is, where science fits in with and technology basically, and to speak publicly and freely about it. These are people that canceled, destroyed their lives, took licenses from doctors and scientists that questioned the jab, that questioned the COVID narrative, that questioned Fauci. I mean, Fauci still is a god in Hollywood. I'd love to hear this woman's take on Fauci, in light of how she's talking about this, because you take Oppenheimer and that story out of it. And one last thing before I'll throw to you guys is Oppenheimer. You have to understand that very complicated guy, and when this happened, but he said this quote that kind of stays with everyone. That because I've read tons of articles that people have written about him. He died 50 years ago, so very interesting. But he said this quote: "We knew the world would not be the same," meaning after they created the nuclear bomb. "A few people laughed, a few people cried, most people were silent. I remember the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad, I always say that wrong, Gita. Vinshu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him, takes on his multi-armed form and says, 'Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.' I suppose we all thought that one way or another when they completed the bomb." So, and that Vishnu story, by the way, is that multi-armed, Hindu statue that's in front of CERN, which I find interesting.
They also made Obama on the cover of Time magazine.
They sure did.
Oh, right.
Yep.
So, right, exactly. So it's very interesting because to me, I'm not sure what CERN's doing, but I know that it's not for the good of mankind. And there's all kinds of, I'm sure Clay's done with you and I've done with him. And there's all kinds of really disturbing stuff attached to CERN, but that is they have a big giant, statue of this in front of CERN and on like the table when they're having meetings, and it's scary. And that is a quote from that thing. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." So, but anyway, so that's exactly.
Right
There's the statue. The interesting one with Obama, there he goes. There's Obama, the god of all things. He's on the cover of Newsweek. And it's interesting, you talk about the 7 mountains of influence. He's holding the world, the military complex, the financial markets, which is our currency, the housing market, the dove, religion. He's the god of religion. Medicine. He's got the stethoscope. Obama was really pitched. He's even standing, in the position with the legs and all that, positioning himself. And the media, media coming behind it and saying yes, there's no coincidences. That is the image that they're wanting to come into alignment with. That's the at the very heart of CERN is this idea of if you're going to trace all these organizational charts, you come up with good and evil.
Yep.
And CERN would be truly the workshop of evil.
Yeah. And you know what I do want the audience to know, like, we all just dig into things, but I find this, we just have to all be very clear and honest. This, and believe me, I'm sure the movie will win Oscars. He'll probably win the Best Actor award. I'm sure some of the guests, I don't know, one of them will win probably Best Supporting Actor, even though I think that they've taken away actor and actress, and now there's non-gender, which I'm telling you, everyone in Hollywood thinks is absolutely ridiculous. Or everyone I've talked to, which is smaller now, but that should never happen. But I do want people to understand something very bizarre here that we talked about before we came on camera. So we have to understand that he died 50 years ago. His security clearance was taken away well before that. The agency that he worked for, the Atomic Energy Commission, was also ended about, I think, 28 years ago or something. Okay. And they had taken his clearance, and they said that it was because of his connections to Russians that were proven, and connections to the Communist Party that were proven. But by taking his security clearance, they stopped him from continuing his work in that realm, or from stopping them from continuing work. Whatever the case may be, we don't know, because I think both sides of the warmongers are terrible people. But whatever the case may be, some reason in 2021, Granholm, who runs Joe Biden's Department of Energy that did not exist back then, vindicates Robert Oppenheimer from the 1954 Atomic Energy Commission decision taking away his security clearance, just in time for this movie to start shooting. Does anyone have any explanation why this would happen? A, Granholm, isn't even with the agency that took it away, because the agency no longer exists. B, she shut down all of our oil and gas and all of our ingenuity when it comes to energy. Nobody's really sure what the Department of Energy does other than end our energy independence, and then gets an executive order for Oppenheimer's security clearance to be reinstated 50 years after he died. And then subsequently, $100 million movie is made about him being basically some kind of enigmatic hero, just in time for the entire world to find out that basically, I believe the draft in America is going to kick in again. They just called up the 30,000 reserve troops that were not active duty are now being called to active duty. And what I'm hearing is that they want 80,000 U.S. soldiers in Europe to fight the proxy war with Russia that we shouldn't even be in. And there's a lot more money being put into this. So it's just very, very strange timing. And then when you talk about, we've done shows on predictive programming here and other things, we'll call it what you want. It's very bizarre that people are going to be going to the movies, seeing I think an important discussion about nuclear weapons, nuclear war, the need for them, the reason why they were ever created, and was that the original sin, and to keep creating them. Russia, China, the US, they have nuclear submarines all over the world right now. There were Russian submarines right on outside of our waters here not that long ago with nuclear warheads. They're all over the world, and Russia has more than we do. So, this nuclear brinksmanship, and then it makes you wonder, okay, in the middle of this summer, when they're starting to ramp up the war and we're starting to realize, oh, they are going to bring our children to fight in Europe for a country that is not in NATO, but also the most people can't find on a map. I believe that this war is a bunch of oligarch billionaires that have one foot in Russia and one foot in Ukraine. Yeah. And are making, this is on both sides at the very, very top. And here we are forced to discuss this on the front lines. And I hear that the movie's really very scary. And I just wonder if, like, when we saw all the videos we now know are fake of people walking down in Wuhan, dropping dead on the street, and doors being shut, and remember all the images in January and February of the COVID coming from there, or let's think about another Hollywood movie that did this, Inconvenient Truth, about climate change, or Contagion.
Contagion.
So
Matt Damon.
Yeah.
Right before
COVID. So I'm
COVID.
seeing this movie coming out just in time for all these warmonger, Project for New American Century, Nolan, Blinken, Biden, Sullivan, Lindsey Graham, Zelensky saying, and then they're talking, and Lindsey Graham and Blumenthal, a stolen valor guy, are talking recently about that we should have a first strike capability, nuclear first strike. There is no, I don't know, like, I'm sure you guys saw it. We were at Turning Point and Tucker spoke and he said, I don't know of Russia killing any Americans. You know,
Right.
why are we killing, like, what are we doing there? Why can't people ask why we are involved in this war, and why aren't we just stopping funding it and demanding?
And why is everyone on both sides smashing the gas pedal? You know, when you have, Mike Pence on stage getting just destroyed by Tucker, not because Tucker is destroying him. Tucker's just asking basic questions that we're all wondering. And Mike Pence chooses to destroy himself by saying, hey, the American people, that deal is really not my concern. My first concern is this war in Ukraine and funding it and keeping it going and ramping this thing up, when he's only polling at 1% anyway, and probably less than that now. I have no idea why he would be so hell-bent on a war over there, other than, he's got some kind of sweetheart deal, book deal or something on the back end, or a talking gig with MSNBC. I'm not sure who's going to want him when this is over. It's just fascinating that they're all pushing towards there's only one agenda. And I mean, Democrat and Republican across the board are all like, hey, we need peace there. Tap the brakes on this thing. We don't want our kids going over there and getting shot up for Hunter Biden's retirement fund, and all this stuff. It's like nobody wants to be in it other than these elites.
Yeah. And why? And, and very, very strangely, because this I believe, fully installed regime, installed by the globalist billionaire oligarchs that have captured our nation, that want this. They've always wanted the same people. It goes down through centuries. I mean, through the last 100 years, at least you can track it. Funding both sides of every war, also profiting off of the after-war rebuild. We all know that BlackRock, as we reported on your show, like almost 2 years ago, that BlackRock was already in bed, that Zelensky had gone to the World Economic Forum, which has a joint agreement with the UN. People keep saying that they're different. They're not. They are all the same people at the very top. But that Zelensky had in 2019, we played the clip on here on one of our shows in the past. If people want to go look at our Ukraine shows, they really are insightful more now than ever. But he had announced at the World Economic Forum in 2019, before the war, that they wanted nuclear weapons, Ukraine, and also that Ukraine was open for business for the Green New Deal, tech investments, and Great Reset stuff. So what is being tested there is a lot of energy, a lot of weapons, and the central bank digital currency, track and trace surveillance. People aren't fully aware that a lot of the things that they plan to implement worldwide are already implemented in Ukraine right now. So people have to really look at a lot of this stuff and wonder, again, what is really going on there? And now that, Russia is being backed into a corner, and I just want to propose something here to people that I heard recently. I've had such a hard week, you guys. I don't know what's going on with you guys, and I don't know what's going on with our audience and everyone, but there's just been, I feel like Satan is really, really trying to really wrangle everything and take people down and hurt people and harm people, people I love, myself, other people. I keep seeing it. It's a desperation. It's a very, very scary time, I think, for these evil demons, because so many of us are awake, so many of us are looking at this, and whether the timing of this movie coming out, the timing 2 years ago, right before the movie went into production, of the Biden regime exonerating Oppenheimer for a trial that happened a long time ago, and another problem with exonerating Oppenheimer, because I do not trust whoever put Joe Biden in office, and I do not think that they are American. It is my firm belief that they want a one-party system, and unfortunately, so many Democrats and leftists are so blinded by propaganda and brainwashing of hatred of either Trump or Republicans or right or whatever, that they don't realize that one-party system will be global. It will not be American. It will be the institution of Agenda 2030. It will be sustainable development goals. It'll be top-down, one world money, one world military, NATO, one world control, very, very controlled, one world type religion, if religion is allowed at all. And this is not extraordinary. This has happened in the past. It just never happened in America. And the thing about America is we are the great experiment of freedom, liberty, and self-determination. And they do not want that to exist anymore. Plus, people never talk about that, of course, China and every other nation would like our amazing natural resources that we are on top of. But, this was vacated, this ruling, 68 years after this trial happened.
I'd be
Okay,
curious
and-
if somebody had a Wayback Machine and could trace it. What did his Wikipedia look like 10 years ago?
Yeah.
5 years ago? Like 2 years
knows,
ago,
dude?
2 months ago, 2 weeks ago, like leading up to the release of this movie. It's amazing
That's
how
a
they
great
kind of
question.
whitewash these things. That would be a good little project for some of you little digital soldiers out there. What
and you
did
wonder
his
if the chicken or the egg? You know,
Yeah.
did they did they exonerate him to make him into a hero to help Hollywood get the movie more, or the opposite? Like and then there's another thought to it too, which is this doesn't set a great precedence to go back in time and exonerate a scientist or anyone, a general, whatever it is, in a totally different decade, generation, a different environment, and say that a decision that happened 50 years ago that was decided in a trial can now be undone. Because what does that open the door to?
Great
What
point.
other security clearance suspensions and can be reversed?
Well, it's
Like,
not.
if
It's
you-
not a. It's not a far stretch though. When you can also vilify every founding father, every
Right.
every hero of war. Like when you're renaming military bases and everything based on looking through a telescope lens backwards 100 years and judging somebody based on your standard today and your pronouns of the moment. You know, and judging them through that lens. When you can rewrite for the good, you can rewrite for the bad.
Yep.
You can simply make everything in the past whatever you would like to fit your current agenda.
Yeah. And it's just striking to me the time that this is coming out, because all I can think about is the different times that, because, you know, I talk a lot about, especially because Kathy and I have done a whole series on collective trauma and how JFK murder and other 9/11, other things, they put the populace into a very malleable, very suggestible kind of desperate situation, kind of Hegelian dialectic, create the problem, you know, cause the chaos, and come in with the solution, all the same guy. So I just find it very hard to believe what I know now about the last 50 years of our history, especially the CIA and a lot of the media and what really is going on. It's extraordinary coincidence that this would be coming out to ignite, I believe, a lot of fear of a nuclear bomb and what a nuclear bomb would do, while we are daily hearing about nuclear brinksmanship from insane psychopaths, in my opinion, that will not negotiate the end of all of this. Because you know what, also with JFK, one of the multiple reasons I believe he was murdered by his own people was because he wanted to end the creation of both biological weapons and nuclear weapons.
Yep.
This guy, actually, Oppenheimer, was saying that they shouldn't make them either. But now, you know, so you got to put that all together with these warmongers right now that are, you know, our kids. It's only any day now before, you know, the LGBTQ plus and the CRT starts adding, you know, the knowledge of nuclear war and the possibility of world war. I mean, they've been pretending that's not the case, but as you guys reported on with me, you know, almost 2 years ago, it was always the case. You know, something's wrong. The Great Reset is about destroying what is and rebuilding it the way they want. Sustainable development goals are sustainable for them, you know, and the people that have wielded this power.
So what about, when did the book come out that was written that this movie is based on?
2005.
Okay. 2005. And she obviously saw the movie, and she's excited for everyone to see it.
Yeah.
But definitely pushing some sort of agenda.
Yeah. No, well, she's saying that it is a basically in the interviews that I've seen with her and reading, is she's saying that it's a rebuke of the McCarthy hearings about Marxism and communism infiltrating America again, at a time when Marxism and communism obviously did infiltrate America. So you got that on top of it, very left wing, her book is very sympathetic to him. But also very sympathetic and acting as if the entire communist Red Scare, McCarthy hearings, all of that were a lie, and that never happened, and that it was a witch hunt by the right. And again, it's the same thing, same kind of storyline there. The other thing is, it was called American Prometheus, and I looked up the Prometheus myth, which is Prometheus was a Greek god who upset Zeus because he gave fire to the people. he gave the tool of fire to the mortals, and then punished him by, for the rest of his life, he had to push a boulder up a hill, I believe, while hawks or something were biting at his organs. You know, they're very fair in the Greek myths about afterlife. You know, like Dante's Inferno, and then every day he would push the boulder all the way up, and then it would fall down, and he'd have to do that every day the next day. So apparently Zeus was very upset that Prometheus gave the tool of fire to mortals. So that's what the book is, American Prometheus. Very interesting, just like his quote. So, you know, to me, it's like, it's all, the timing just seems very, you know, it's like at this point with everything we know, the timing seems a little suspect to get a lot of people really, really scared or paranoid or panicked or up in arms about the prospect of World War III, which we all know there is no way that it will not be a nuclear war. I mean, that's just the way it goes. And sadly, you know, I was also looking up, because not only does Russia have the most weapons, nuclear weapons, but we have been sending a lot of our military weaponry and everything to Ukraine and to the EU. We also still have wars that nobody can really explain in Syria, in Yemen. I think we still have 800 bases. I didn't know we had 80,000 troops already in Europe that can be ready to go on the front lines of this World War III. And I don't know what the PSYOP. What do you guys think? If it is some kind of thing where they're like, okay, well, he's going to be making a movie about the nuclear war. It's going to be like that 1980s, the day after. It's going to scare people to death. You know, it's going to come out mid-July. Around mid-July, we're also going to trigger World War III and talk a lot about nuclear weapons. If that is not a coincidence, what could that be about?
Let me throw out just another thing, just with the energy usage of it. You know, I think on average, like every day or every 3 days or something like that, China's opening a new coal plant. You know, that's happening there, and there's this big push everywhere here to go towards, you know, clean, renewable energy. Nuclear is obviously the cleanest, most efficient, most useful. We're shutting those down like crazy, going with the solar panels or the wind turbines, which, you know,
kills birds.
What do they have, like a 7-year lifespan? You know, the oil in them that you have to put in and add to them. They're so ridiculous when you look at the whole model of the wind turbines. And then they're thrown into there's a pit specifically for them, I think in Wyoming or something, to just
they're massive.
You know, killing the birds, all these kind of things. But so they're going with all these alternative energies that they've got to convince you are better, because nuclear has got to be awful. And you know, Nolan has also attacked the oil industry. He's attacked all of the things that this current regime is also turning off. So, you know,
I mean, can you imagine that there was no conversation between Granholm and nobody knows what the Department of Energy does except for destroy our energy independence and go towards the COP27 carbon credit. Just last week, Yellen's out there in China talking about an international global climate tax that we'd all have to pay to them, to the people that create everything. Also, what's the worst thing for their climate emergency? War. What would be the absolute worst thing? Nuclear war. So to put that into the mix, and then what you just said, David, is really interesting too, because what we are seeing in this scenario too is that Oliver Stone, our pal, that we've shown his movie Ukraine on Fire, and suggested it multiple times. He actually has a documentary out now about nuclear being the answer. I don't know if you guys have ever talked or know.
I've not seen that yet.
Yeah, and they're calling him everything he puts out. They call him a conspiracy theorist until it's proven absolutely right. Everything. But you know, that's that. And then Alex Epstein is out there. He's got a great book on fossil future, and you know, same thing. Like, what they are doing is they are creating total scarcity. Totally, that they control everything. It's the Sustainable Development Goals, which are not sustainable. It's controllable, predictable, manageable for them to sustain their power, while the rest of the world gets pushed to a very low socialist, for who survives. Frankly, a lot of people out there are saying that they're pushing for this war and this nuclear brinksmanship and all of this because the COVID wasn't what they had planned, or this wasn't what they planned, and this is just another phase of the Great Reset. I'm sure we talked about it on here, but people can go look up George Soros' speech during the lockdowns, during COVID, at the World Economic Forum. He made a very, very scary speech. And at the end of the speech, I have a lot of guys on from all over the world that talk about it. And every single one of them was saying, well, to me, it sounds like what George Soros is saying is if we don't get the Great Reset and we don't get the this movement to the fourth industrial revolution, one world, top-down global governance, we're just going to have to blow the whole thing up. I do encourage everyone, go look up George Soros' speech at the World Economic Forum, I believe, I would say 2021, the Davos one, and listen to what he's saying. And because I fully believe that the entire planet is being manipulated by a globalist billionaire oligarchy group of about 7,000 people, if I spoke it all out at the very top, and probably many we don't know that don't care that you don't know, that live in some castle somewhere in England. But I have to tell you, like, I'm curious what people think about these, because people are going to go see the movie and stuff, but are they going to know that 2 years before the Biden regime put in an executive order to exonerate this man, say that he was unfairly tried? Are they going to go back and exonerate Trump for all these bogus trumped up charges in 50 years?
Yeah,
it's important to know these things because we've done all these shows. I just did a special the other day on the kind of will let them eat bugs, is with Sean Baker, is a medical doctor and orthopedic surgeon, but he's a carnivore diet guy, big on meat, understanding that industry. Well, Iron Man here, Robert Downey Jr., has his own bug protein product that he's on with Stephen Colbert, talking about the meat, being bad. They're all on board with the agenda of these certain things. Nobody's hardly, tied in deeper to the World Economic Forum than Matt Damon, except for Leonardo DiCaprio, which has a new movie coming out about oil and Indian lands and all of that, kind of a complicated story that has multiple, layers involved. So they're making these movies, but they're creating an agenda that reinforces or creates a platform for what the World Economic Forum via the Biden administration are putting in place. And so all of these things are connected. I'm anxious to get people's feedback when they see this movie.
Me too.
And what they're doing. I encourage everybody, like and share this episode, put it out there. We're going to continue to examine current events and culture. Culture's always, as they say, upstream. Breitbart was from culture's upstream of policy. If you want to know the policies that are putting you in shackles today, look at the cultural message that was created just before it that made that possible to ramrod through.
That is so good. And then all the graphics that Mel covered today, you can just text the phone number 40509, text the word Mel to 40509, and make sure you register for her newsletter at themelkshow.com and check out her resources. Mel, thank you so much for all of the research that you put in to help to get this information out.
Thank you for having me, and I want you guys to know it's always so much fun. And we were traveling a lot, but we're going to get back and do this. But this is exciting to do different things on different topics, because you are right. We have to watch culture. I think a big problem to how we got here is that we weren't paying attention to culture, and in the meantime, they've tried to. And you're right about all those same people and those same actors. You can even look at some of the last few Tony Stark movies and the transhumanism. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can go off, but why is it always the same people? So, I just wanted to say thank you so much. It's really fun. We don't know what to make of this. It's just a lot of weird coincidences. And all I can say is, if you feel like this movie is triggering you emotionally, you should take a step back and wonder why. And maybe that's the point. And be brave, be strong, and speak the truth.
We also kind of like to break down the kind of the news behind the news, the actual facts behind the headlines when it comes to the economy, because things are thrown out and there's always a spin. Everybody's got a spin. So we want to kind of decipher what is their language actually doing. So every week we do an economic update with a guy that has not one, but two PhDs, Dr. Kirk Elliott.
Hey, how are you?
Great. Welcome to the show.
Well, it's great to be with you.
Yes.
Lot of stuff happening going on. And I saw this article actually just earlier this week on Zero Hedge by a guy named Zoltan Pozsar. So, I
would have hated that in kindergarten.
No kidding.
No, it's not like Adam or Steve.
No.
It's like Zoltan. I bet he's not from here.
His mom was holding him like, oh, my little baby Zoltan. I'm sorry, dude. I hope he doesn't watch our show.
No, it's probably some kind of a European descendant. But regardless of the name Zoltan, the guy is brilliant, right? So he's been one of the world's foremost experts in really the ugly nuances and scenery of world money, right? So the guy is really, really smart. So I've actually been reading him for a long time. I just had to make fun of his name because it's Zoltan.
Well, you have 2 PhDs. You're the kind of dude that would read articles by a guy named Zoltan.
Yeah.
I
Well,
know.
most people probably wouldn't understand the articles by a guy by the name of Zoltan.
No, it reminds me of a name that would be like the evil villain on a Disney cartoon, right?
Yeah,
But no, the guy is absolutely just flipping brilliant, right? So he's talking about a monetary divorce from dollar hegemony, which means what? Means we've been the world's reserve currency and the global financial system is dumping it like yesterday's trash. Right. And but then he goes on to say, well, yeah, so this is all happening. But what happens next? Because, we've seen these kind of things before. Right. We went from a gold backed currency, in the early 1920s in America to then the Bretton Woods system, which Bretton Woods system was done in 1944. It basically made the U.S. dollar the world's reserve currency at that point. And for international settlements, our currency was still backed by gold. So countries could trade in their debts in gold with each other, but consumers couldn't, right? Citizens could not. And then in 1970s, Nixon closed that gold window, right, completely because France wanted it to be paid back in gold. And Nixon said, no way, Jose, we're not going to do that. We're going to pay you back in our stinky dollars, right? So then at that point, we were no longer the world's reserve currency in forms of having any kind of gold backing. So then they were able to print money like there was no tomorrow. Why were they able to print money like there was no tomorrow? Because we technically then started backing our currency with oil because we had the petrodollar. Well, now what Zoltan is talking about here is a move yet again to like Bretton Woods 3, just named it Bretton Woods 3. It's just a change in the global economic order, changing of the dynamics in the global economy. So what he said in this article is that the global financial system is going through a monetary divorce and becoming more multipolar. So what do we mean by multipolar? Instead of just one US dollar, you're going to have like BRICS nations, for example, which is all kinds of countries that want to be backed by gold. We will find out August 22nd through the 26th of this year, so just a few weeks from now, right? If this is what they're going to announce, and I have no reason to think why they would not announce that they are going to have a BRICS currency that's backed by gold. Now, there's a pickle that comes with that. It's like, is there enough gold in the world to back a currency? It's like, of course there is.
That's a good question.
Of course. I mean, you could back all the currency in the world with 1 ounce. It would just make that ounce really expensive, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, so people say, well, there's not enough gold to back. It's like, yes, there is. This is why the prices change, right? So this is where if you're going to back the BRICS currency with gold, well, then we should be buying tangible assets now, right? Because once you have, and people say, well, Kirk, why wouldn't you invest in gold right now? Because silver's outperforming gold. I mean, just over the last week, gold might have gone up like 1.6% or something like that, but silver went up like 8. I mean, literally went up over $2 last week, which is incredible. So before all of this starts happening, by us allocating into silver, we'll sell our silver down the road, get more ounces of gold for free to take advantage of when these tectonic global shifts really start to become more prevalent in a multipolar financial world, right? So Zoltan goes on to say, if you go into a world where trade is not dominantly invoiced in dollars, it's no longer a machinery where dollars are getting created on the margin. It's the dollars are getting accumulated on the market. So not created, but rather accumulated by whom? By all the people getting the stimulus money, right? So, but there's no real meaning behind the value of the currency when all you do is just print it. Nobody wants it anymore. This is where you start to go into an inflationary world. And so what he's then goes on to say is we're starting to see evidence that more and more commodity trades are being settled in renminbi, which is the Chinese internal currency, right? So they're getting ready for a new change in the currency system. Already new trade agreements between countries trading, basically bilateral trade agreements, but even more and more commodity trades not being transacted in US dollars, but in the Chinese currency. Ooh, so this becomes really wild. So this tells me that the BRICS nations are already stronger than what we already think that they are. So what then comes into play in a global tectonic shift of this magnitude where everything as we've known it since 1944? Well, people are going to oppose that because it's too many unknowns, right? They're going to say, I don't know about this Chinese currency. I don't think, but this is why I believe the BRICS nations want to back their currency with gold, because people know gold. Even people who don't invest in gold know it has value. Right. It's real, right? So that's why you get a wedding band that's made out of gold rather than like aluminum or something, because it has value. People know that it's something. So here's where, what are countries now doing? More and more, the data is telling us that especially in countries that are not geopolitically aligned with the U.S., they're shutting U.S. treasuries, they're shutting the dollar, and they're buying gold instead because they know that a shift is coming. See, people don't invest. Countries don't invest. Billionaires don't invest. Hedge funds don't invest and basically mortgage the farm on something if they didn't think that it was a sure thing, right? Central banks around the world are buying gold by the tens of tons, by the hundreds of tons, and by the thousands of tons. When I see that, it's not like they're just dabbling in this stuff, thinking, if we lose it, not a big deal. Maybe we'll hit a home run, like most kind of dumber American investors do. It's like, I've got to hit a home run here. I've worked my whole life. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I'm going to throw everything into this dinar thing or something.
FDX looks like an exciting opportunity.
Right.
These guys are based in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
See, but that is not smart. You can't hit a home run like that and expect it to actually work, right? It's always hard work. It's consistency. It's consistency of future expectations. It's not overpaying for anything. It's minimizing risk, maximizing return. Those are the ideals that create wealth over time, right? So that's when in this article, this what he's telling us is that countries are shunning U.S. treasuries. Why? Because they don't see a good end result for it. They're buying gold. Why? Because they do see an end result for it that's good, or else they wouldn't do it. And they're not dabbling. They're buying hundreds or thousands of tons. There's a lot of pounds in a ton, and there's a lot of ounces in a pound, right? This is a lot of gold that we're talking about. So here's where he kind of ends with, he thinks that the gold aspect is the only thing that definitely survives. He said, I think the commodity shortage in this is going to be there, and there's going to be a shortage in gold because of all these central banks that are buying it. So I say that to say, if we allocate into silver now, it's outperforming, and then we can get gold before it goes into the shortage mode because of all these central banks buying it up to back their currency. It's like, okay, now for the people that are investing into crazy things thinking they're going to hit a home run, this is a home run. It just takes a little bit longer to get there, right? So boy, I just want people to minimize their risk, maximize their return. And when you've got politicians doing such crazy, dumb things like they're doing right now, that's what causes gold and silver to thrive. Case in point, Janet Yellen. She's a smart lady. She's got to be, right? But I always like these pictures of politicians, and they make them just like crazy looking, right? But but she said, this is a crazy statement. Funding Ukraine's war effort is the best boost for the global economy. It's like, that defies economic logic that you learn in an introductory economics class, is that you never use good money to chase bad, right? The end result of war is always damage to both sides. There's nothing productive that ever comes out of that, right? So it's a loss of bullets as they just go away. Now you have to pay money to them. It's a loss of lives, which those people never be able to be productive again. It's a loss of time. So this is a classic example of good money chasing bad, and some supposedly smart economists saying this is going to be the best thing for the global economy ever. How could it be when you're creating nothing that brings productivity to the table? You're doing nothing that creates lasting jobs. It's like, well, maybe you do create jobs in the immediate term, right? Because you have to create the war machine, but then those jobs go away,
right,
when the war is over. War never does anything good for an economy long term. So why would she say that this is going to be good for the global economy? Because she has to, because she's a politician and they have to justify their actions somehow. And most people will not understand what she's saying, right? But this is not good for the economy. This is why you're going to see more inflationary pressures and gold and silver continuing to go up.
Man. Okay, so
we do not have serious people or people that should be
No.
taken seriously in charge.
Nope. So something that you talk about all the time to protect ourselves is to, get out of this dollar, get into something that is safe. And silver and gold, silver specifically right now, is a great place for spending our money and putting our attention. You can go to flyovergold.com. It's a landing page. It's a place that you can fill out your information. Someone from Dr. Kirk's team will give you a call to answer questions, to help you walk through this process. For us, when we first started doing it, we didn't understand it at all, but they did a great job of explaining it to us so that we could make wise decisions for our family.
And to know why you're doing, what you're doing. And you think about this, like I have a dollar and I have, a chunk of silver here. Just, if you had the equivalent amount of each, if you had a shoebox full of US dollars and a shoebox full of silver, but saving equal dollar amount today, which would anybody want?
Definitely the silver.
The silver is if you're going to put them both in some locked safe and come back in 100 years, which you're going to want? If you're going to come back in 1 year, which would you want? You would want the silver. And so it's like anything that is tied, whether it's your mutual funds or your IRA or anything that's tied to this, it's not going to be worth as much in the future as
safe.
A real item. So
exactly
these guys help you walk through that. It's not our site. We just have a directing page, flyovergold.com. All that does is just direct you right to their spot, because it's easier to spell that than it is Kirk. Is it Kurt? Is it Kurt with a T? I don't know. What is that? Elliott? It's got double letters. Very confusing. So flyovergold.com just gets you into their space to put in your information.
That's right. Or you can call 720-605-3900. Dr. Kirk, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Are you having a hard time sleeping at night, thinking, what am I going to do about my finances?
Times are really changing. They're changing fast. Let me give you a quick example of how. In 1920, if you had a $20 bill and 1 ounce of gold, you could go into any men's clothing store and buy an entire suit. You could buy the jacket, the shirt, the belt, shoes, the whole bit. Today, that $20 bill, what's it going to get you?
Not much.
Maybe the socks, maybe a handkerchief, but the 1 ounce of gold could still buy you the entire suit at any men's store in America. That's the difference. That's what inflation does to your dollar. It's a deflating dollar caused by inflation. Now today, that's happening faster than ever. You need somebody that you trust that can help get you out of a fake currency and into something that's going to keep you safe.
And we know a guy that has 2 PhDs by the name of Dr. Kirk Elliott. We have known him for over 25 years, and he's someone we completely trust.
You need somebody that you can get a hold of, somebody that's going to be there for you to get back out of it, and then maybe back into the stock market, maybe back into something else when things settle down. But right now is not that time. You need somebody that you trust and somebody you can call and make those worries go away.
That's exactly right. So you can go to flyovergold.com, fill out your information for a free consultation, or you can call 720-605-3900. Do it today.
You'll be glad you did.
Hello, Flyover family. Join me every Wednesday for the Prophetic Report at 11:11 Central. You can find it on Rumble. You can find it on the Flyover app. We have such an incredible time of hearing from all of these different prophetic voices like Robin Bullock, Julie Green, Barry Wunsch, Amanda Grace, and Hank Kuhneman. Every week, it's either 5 or 6 different prophets that are speaking, and what's interesting is God is speaking through them, and all of these voices come together like puzzle pieces. It is so exciting to hear what the Lord is saying. We're hearing from medical, we're hearing from military intelligence, we're hearing from the financial world, we're hearing from mainstream media, but the most important is, what is God saying? He has not fallen off the throne. He's not nervous. He's not chewing his nails. He is in control. He has plans to prosper us and not to harm us. What a great time to be alive, and I'm so excited for you to join me every Wednesday at 11:11.
Have you ever wondered about ancient civilizations or the moon landing, chemtrails, the Nephilim, demons? Those are all things that fascinate me. Decided to use our platform of the Flyover Conservative podcast and create a new show called Conspiracy Conversations. Every Saturday morning, we get together with some of the brightest minds in the world that have spent thousands of hours on a topic, churning through the research, looking at things. They've traveled, they've been to the locations, they're looking for the truth because they're as curious as you and I are about what's true. What is really true about our past, where we came from, where we are, and where we're going. We don't bring on guests to iron out their wrinkles and find out the things that we disagree on. No more than I go to the grocery store and try to put everything in the whole store in my cart. I just try to walk out with better ideas than I had when I walked in. If you got something inside you that's like, what about that? I don't even know if I agree, but I would like to hear them out. If you have an open mind and a curious heart, we've got a show for you every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, conspiracyconversations.com.